we've seen, prices going out of hand. And suddenly we've just seen a market that is saturated with sanitizers. And we've seen so many manufacturing facilities just springing up all over the show. And to an extent, there is absolutely no control as well in terms of upholding certain standards or also making sure that these are the sanitizers that we should be using.
That's so true. So, how do we protect the public and the public's interest? So we have the Consumer Protection Act, and it's very important that we as a public take action and we make sure that we understand the regulations regarding sanitizers, hand sanitizers specifically, and that we actually look at the labels. So what happened overnight? We suddenly had a 400% increase in bulk orders. That's just to give you an idea of the scale, overnight scale. So it's logic that our existing, very well managed and registered companies could not supply. And overnight, people exploited the situation, and there was also legitimate companies popping up overnight, importing bulk raw material, or making it or importing the formulated product already. A lot of those are not registered. A lot of those products have not been tested, and a lot of it is fake. So that's facts that we have. The problem now is nobody's looking at it. So not only did we overnight see increase in volumes, but we've seen an increase in prices. They actually say they estimate 66 million above market price. That's what happened overnight in this country and actually all over the world.
Exactly. And I mean, it's become it's become a huge business. And you make mention of this, Professor Korsten, in your article, talking about non-specialist companies, being registered to secure government contracts. And we've seen what has happened with all the corruption, with the exploitation and the inflated prices of these sanitizers.
So what's now very interesting is we are currently doing a study, and then there's another recent study that was done in a laboratory, Pietermaritzburg, where they found that only 2 of the 11 hand sanitizers that they tested, and they purchased that from retailers, contained 1-propanol. So it's important to understand what should be in the sanitizer. And the second point is one should also look at what should be on the label. So there's disinformation or a lack of effective information in terms of what is a good sanitizer that's effective. The problem is if you don't use the correctly formulated product, it's not going to protect you. So the consumer will walk around with a false sense of protection, and that is critical during COVID. So we must make sure that the products they buy is correct, it's correctly formulated. And we must also make sure that we actually monitor what's out in the market. And that's a government responsibility. So in our studies, we found that only 2 big laboratories have been registered according to the self-regulatory standard SANS 490. And so that's a voluntary standard, and that's our problem. It's voluntary, and it's not a legal requirement. So the 2 issues, the one is the labeling and the second is the formulated product.
Exactly. And with all this talk about COVID-19 being with us for a long time and possibly even this talk about a second wave, this is absolutely important. This is critical that, a standard is set as far as sanitizers are concerned. Now, perhaps, you can just help us out here in terms of what constitutes a good standard internationally as far as sanitizers are concerned.
Yeah, so this is very important because I can give you an example. 10 out of 60 products that we tested complied with the labeling requirements. So there is national labeling requirements, what we don't have in place. So a labeling requirement will basically say it's got to tell you the manufacturer, the expiry date, the content, additives, the active ingredient, etc., etc. But what is important is that there is an international standard that has recently been revised, which is the ISO 490. It's been revised, and South Africa has adopted that. So we call it the SANS, South African National Standard 490, and it's been released. There's a new 2020 version, and all companies producing sanitizers must have a look at that standard. And it's unfortunately currently voluntary, but I believe de facto it should be compulsory for everyone. And a consumer should not buy a product unless it's got SANS 490. And yes, it's going to take some time, but we have to get ready now. And it's very important that the public must understand that we do have a national regulator for compulsory specifications. We have SABS, and we have environmental health protection officers, and we have the Department of Health, and we have pieces of legislation, but it's not specifically targeting hand sanitizers, and we have to fix it now before the second wave.
Yes, one important aspect of these sanitizers is the use of alcohol or possibly even methanol. And there is this argument, there is this debate going on in terms of the content, how much methanol as opposed to alcohol, because methanol is obviously a cheaper form of alcohol, Professor Korsten.
Yes, so there's two important things. There is a minimum percentage of alcohol that's required in ethanol that's required in your formulated product, and we work on 80%. In fact, they say that anything less than 70% will be less effective. So it's all about contact time. It doesn't mean that 99% alcohol is going to be more effective. So we work on an optimum of 80%, and it's very important that water is used as a diluent. You can use glycerol to prevent cracking of the hands. Some people even add hydrogen peroxide, which is important for bacterial spores, etc., in the solution. But we try and avoid colorants that's added or perfumes that's added to that. That should not be added to. So it's always about what is added to the product. So the ethanol percentage is very important because it's all about contact time. So 80% will, in seconds, actually disrupt the enveloping lipid membrane of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And that's very important. And that's why if you use products with lower ethanol percentages, and some products has been tested with 46% or 67%, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be effective with purpose of immediately disinfecting your hand. And that's the whole purpose of using it. Now, methanol is not ethanol, and this is very important. It can be deadly. It can be toxic. We have reports of continuous exposure, which will lead to toxicity. It gets absorbed. And, of course, if you drink methanol, and we've had cases of people drinking disinfectants, and it's severe, and you can actually die from it. So there's severe conditions. Eczema has been reported. Inflamed skin has been reported. And that's all because of incorrectly formulated products. Now, what's very important is we have to think of children and the elderly. Elderly people will have thinner skins. It gets absorbed in them quicker. And it's key that we protect them. So it's very important that we have to look at what's in these hand sanitizers and be very careful with in terms of the use of it and understanding what we are using in terms of for the public.
Now, Professor Korsten, I know you've recommended what needs to be done, and also at the same time for calling for urgent steps to be considered, considering that we are going to be living with sanitizers for a very, very long time, and to the extent that even looking at the regulatory framework with regards to compliance.
Yes, and I think we must get our house in order, and I see there's a small window for us to do it, and I believe we should be ready come the Christmas time, the end of the year time, the holiday time, when people all go and move around and there's more movement of people, and particularly end of the year. We've got a November window to do things, and then we know the whole country go into another lockdown, voluntary lockdown. And have to be ready. And that's very important.
Well, Professor Korsten, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning here on News and Views. All the best to you.
Thanks very much.
That was Professor Lise Korsten joining us this morning about sanitizers. And I know many of us have become accustomed to sanitizers. We carry them in our cars. We have them at homes. We enter shopping malls. And the key issue is just how much are we aware as far as these sanitizers go about using correct hand hygiene techniques, and also at the same time the safe use, the storage, the effectiveness of hand sanitizers. And this is where this campaign obviously needs to gain momentum, because we're not out of the doldrums yet. We are not out of the pandemic, and with all the talks of second waves, and especially when we're looking at what is happening right across the entire world, it is definitely something that is going to stay with us. But I think more importantly, how safe it is, and or how
What makes
genuine
run
or fake the article is that we are using. The time is just gone 9 a.m. We're heading for the news. We'll be back.